We're going to partake in communion here together in a moment. But before we did that, I wanted to just take a couple of minutes, since it's the first communion of the year, to just refresh our minds on what this act is all about. There's a reason that we partake in this together, and I just wanted to remind us of 5 aspects of the Lord's Supper. First off, we remember Christ and his sacrifice and what he has done for us. Jesus instructed his disciples in Luke 22:19 and 1 Corinthians 11:24 to do this in remembrance of me. The bread, Jesus tells us, represents his body. The fruit of the vine represents his blood. When we take the elements of communion, we remember and thoughtfully reflect on Christ's great sacrifice on our behalf. As Romans 5:8 tells us, for God proves his own love for us, that while we were yet still sinners, Christ died for us. Number 2, we celebrate the new covenant that Christ came to initiate. Both Luke 22:20 and 1 Corinthians 11:25 refer to the cup as the new covenant in my blood. Jesus was celebrating the Passover meal with his disciples. That feast commemorated God's deliverance of his people from Egyptian slavery through the Exodus event. The blood on their doorposts was a means of protecting the Hebrews' firstborn. The Exodus was the key deliverance or salvation event in the Old Testament. And Jesus takes this important tradition and inaugurates a new covenant, established not by the blood of a Passover lamb, but through his own blood, shed on the cross for our salvation and deliverance from the slavery of sin. This is the foundation of the new covenant. Number 3, we receive spiritual nourishment. Ever wondered why God cares about rituals and why Jesus commands us to observe the Lord's Supper? I've come to realize that it's not really for God's benefit, but for ours. We as humans need tangible expressions of our faith. When we take in the nutrients and the nourishment of the bread and the cup, this becomes a means into our persons taking the benefits of Christ's death applied to us. When the bread and drink enter into our bodies, we remember that he died on our behalf, and this provides us with spiritual nourishment. We are taking the benefits of Christ's death to our own accounts. Number 4, we affirm our faith in Christ. As we take the bread and the cup, we are affirming that we need Jesus and that his death is the security for us. We need his forgiveness, his love, his salvation, and his indwelling spirit. We pledge ourselves to Christ. It is a time of covenant renewal. We commit once again to trusting Jesus and pledging our lives to him. We declare that we wish to honor and obey him. And lastly, number 5, we proclaim his death until he comes and await the final supper. The community of faith observes the Lord's Supper, proclaiming Jesus' death until he returns. When Jesus finished with the bread and the cup, he told his disciples, quote, "But I tell you, from this moment I will not drink of the fruit of the vine until that day when I drink it in a new way in my Father's kingdom with you." Revelation tells of a day when heaven proclaims that the marriage supper of the Lamb has come and his bride has made herself ready. We live in between the cups, the first cup representing the death of Christ on our behalf, and the second cup of the gathered saints who will celebrate with Christ his final victory at the marriage supper of the Lamb. So when we observe the Lord's Supper, we anticipate that final day by faith. So let's come together in unity and partake. But I do want to give the warning that Paul gives in 1 Corinthians on this holy act of thanksgiving that we are about to take together. He writes in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, beginning in verse 26. "For as often as you eat this bread and drink this cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes. Therefore, whoever eats the bread and drinks the cup of the Lord in an unworthy way shall be guilty of the body and blood of the Lord. But a person must examine himself, and in doing so he is to eat of the bread and drink of the cup. For the one who eats and drinks eats and drinks judgment to himself if he does not properly recognize the body. So as we pass out the elements today, let's each examine ourselves. Is there some unacknowledged sin in our life? Anything that we are holding higher in our lives than the sacrifice we are observing? Be sure to give it all to God in this moment.